Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping in for a look at the very DNA of knowledge, the hypothesis.
It sounds so academic, but it really is everything.
It is, if you read research papers or even just news reports about new findings, this concept is your master key.
It truly is. I mean, understanding the hypothesis is the ultimate shortcut to becoming a critical consumer of information. Every robust study, every scientific claim is built on this one thing. But most people only get the surface level, the educated guess.
Exactly. And a listener shared this fantastic stack of sources that, well, it really breaks down the whole structure. The requirements for a good hypothesis, the 5 different variables you need to test it, and this philosophical punchline at the end.
So our mission today is to distill those essential distinctions, especially when we get into those tricky variables, and to really arm you with this ultimate insight. Why a hypothesis is never, ever actually proved.
By the end of this, you won't just be reading findings. You'll be evaluating the structural integrity of the claims themselves. It's about spotting a weak argument before you even see the data.
Okay, so let's start with the foundation. When we talk about a good hypothesis, we're not just, brainstorming.
Right.
The sources lay out 9 pretty demanding characteristics. Think of it like a checklist you have to complete before you're even allowed to run the experiment.
Okay, let's unpack this. The first few rules feel like, well, like a reality check. You can't build a study on quicksand.
Precisely. The first, most foundational rule is that a good hypothesis must be in agreement with the observed facts.
You have to start with what you see.
Yeah. If your observation is that people who drink coffee seem more alert, your hypothesis has to start from there, not from its opposite.
And crucially, it must not conflict with any known law of nature. You can't hypothesize that your new rocket fuel works because it, ignores thermodynamics.
Right. It grounds you in reality. It provides the guardrails. You have to start within the realm of the possible.
Then we get into elegant efficiency, which I really appreciate. A good hypothesis has to be stated in the simplest possible terms.
Occam's razor, basically.
Yeah. Why make it complex when simplicity makes it easier to test?
And that simplicity is key because it directly impacts the next few elements, which are all about logistics and control. So it must permit the application of deductive reasoning.
Meaning you can go from the big general statement to a specific testable prediction.
Exactly. From more sleep improves memory to if subject A sleeps 8 hours, their score on test B will be higher than if they sleep 6. You can translate the idea into a plan.
But a plan is nothing if you can't execute it. This is where the control criteria come in, right?
Absolutely. The hypothesis must ensure that the methods of verification are under the control of the researcher.
Okay.
If you propose that solar flares affect human aggression, but you can't, manipulate solar flares or isolate their effect.
Your hypothesis is dead in the water. It's unusable.
And that leads to the next practical point. It must guarantee that the available tools and techniques will be effectively used. It's not just theoretical rigor, it's logistical rigor. Do you have the equipment, the statistical tools? If not, the hypothesis fails.
Which brings us to another practical point. The sample must be readily approachable.
Yes. Your hypothesis could be brilliant, but if it's about a deep-sea squid, you can't reach for 10 years.
It just sits on the shelf.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So the rigor is as much about the real world as it is about the idea.
It is. And the last 2 points just ensure clarity. First, it has to clearly show the role of the different variables, which we're about to get into.
Okay.
And finally, it must maintain a very apparent distinction with what is called theory, law, facts, assumptions, and postulate. A hypothesis is its own unique thing. It's testable, but it's not a fact yet.
That clarity is everything. Okay, so we have the blueprint of a good hypothesis. Now the gears that make it run. The variables. Our sources list 5, and mastering the last 3 is, I think, the most valuable part of this deep dive.
This is where we shift from, say, architecture to engineering. When you read any study, understanding the variables is the difference between reading the headline and understanding the machine.
Let's start with the big one everyone needs to get. The independent variable, or 4V, and the dependent variable, the DV, the cause and effect.
Think of it as input and output. The independent variable is the input. It's the thing the researcher measures or manipulates or selects to see what effect it has.
So in a study on exercise, the amount of exercise would be the IV. You change that input.
Exactly. And the dependent variable is the output, the response variable. It's what you observe and measure to see if it changed because of the 4V. Its value, well, it depends on the independent variable.
So if we measure heart health after changing the exercise amount, heart health is the DV, the consequence.
That's the core relationship. But of course, a good study knows that this rarely happens in a vacuum. Life is complex.
Which brings us to the crucial three: the moderator, the control, and the intervening variables. I think most people get the first two, moderator and control, mixed up.
They do. Let's use an example. Let's say our hypothesis is, does a new learning app, the IV, improve test scores, the DV?
Okay, so we give one group the app, another a textbook, and we see what happens.
A moderator variable is a factor we measure specifically to see if it modifies the relationship between the app and the score. We're actively interested in its effect.
Like, does the app work better for younger students than older students?
Perfect example. Age, or sex, often functions as a moderator variable. We want to know if the app affects boys' scores differently than girls' scores. We're studying the moderator.
So it's a condition that changes the main relationship. It's part of the analysis. Now, how is that different from a control variable?
It's completely different. A control variable's effect must be accounted for or neutralized. We use them because we don't want them confusing the main IV-DV relationship.
So with the learning app, a factor like the student's prior intelligence or their socioeconomic status could affect the scores.
Right. And you don't want the smartest kids skewing the results, making the app look better than it is.
So you have to somehow cancel out that effect.
Exactly. And here's the key distinction. The effects of control variables are neutralized, held constant. The effects of moderator variables are studied. You either test students with a similar IQ to neutralize its effect, or you statistically remove its influence later.
That makes it crystal clear. One is eliminated, the other is examined.
Now for the most abstract, and I think the most fascinating one, the intervening variable. This is the black box.
The sources say this one cannot be seen, measured, or manipulated. If it's hypothetical, how is it even scientific? Isn't that just guesswork?
It's not guesswork, it's inference. The intervening variable is the unobservable mechanism we think links the cause and effect.
What's happening inside the person?
Yes. If the app, the IFV, improves the test score, the DV, what happened in between, the intervening variable might be the student's learning process or their attitude towards the subject.
So we can't put a ruler on attitude or hook up a machine to measure learning process.
No. But its effects have to be inferred from the visible changes. If you see a positive IV leading to a positive DV, you infer that a positive intervening variable, like increased motivation, must have been at work. Attitude, habit, interest, they're the processes we believe are driving the outcome.
That whole structure, the measurable IVDV, the studied moderator, the neutralized control, and the inferred intervening variable, that is the key to evaluating any research claim.
If you can ask what they tested, what they accounted for, and what mechanism they're assuming drove the change, you're reading that study like a professional.
So we have a well-formed hypothesis. We understand the variables. Let's get to the final act. How do researchers build this thing, and then how is it actually tested?
The construction part relies on this loop of induction and deduction. You use induction going from specific observations to a general hypothesis.
You see 100 people who exercise have low blood pressure, so you hypothesize that exercise reduces blood pressure.
Right. Then you use deduction to test it. You go from that general idea to a specific prediction. If I put 50 sedentary people on a running program, 80% will see a drop in blood pressure. That lets you design the study.
And the practical value of formulating it this way is huge. It lets researchers generalize their findings beyond specific conditions of their one experiment.
It also just organizes the whole story. It provides the anchor point for the entire research narrative from introduction to conclusion.
But the ultimate test is whether that anchor holds. The purpose of testing is to determine the probability that it is supported by fact.
And this is where the popular understanding of science just completely diverges from the reality of the scientific method. People hear, study confirms X, and they think, okay, X is now a fact.
If the hypothesis stands up to rigorous testing, it must be proved right.
No, absolutely not. The sources are so clear on this, and it's really the philosophical core of modern science. Because a hypothesis is a general statement, there's a huge, often infinite number of instances it could be tested under.
You can't test them all.
It's impractical to attempt to gain support in all of these instances. We can't test every person, every scenario, every condition. It's impossible.
So because it's impossible to test every scenario, you can never say proved.
Correct. The key insight is this. A hypothesis is never proved. It is merely sustained or rejected. If it fails, you modify it or throw it out. Confirmation is always, and this is the quote, a tentative and relative state.
Tentative and relative. That changes everything about how we see scientific progress. It means even our most supported findings, germ theory, gravity, are always subject to later revision if more compelling evidence appears.
Think of it like a reigning champion. They hold the title because they've beaten every challenger so far. But they're always open to the next fight, the next piece of evidence that could overturn everything. You never close the book. You just say, based on current evidence, this hypothesis is sustained.
That distinction, sustained versus proved, that might be the single most important piece of vocabulary for anyone consuming information today. It forces you to accept the uncertainty built into the search for truth.
Absolutely. The big nugget for you, the listener, is to internalize that. The moment you hear a report claiming a finding has been proved, you now know they're misrepresenting the nature of scientific knowledge.
It's about probability, not final verdicts.
This lets you maintain a healthy skepticism without falling into cynicism. You can trust the best available evidence while knowing better evidence might be just around the corner.
So, if all confirmation is inherently tentative and relative, always subject to new evidence or a better hypothesis,
What does that tell you about the fundamental nature of what we call knowledge?
and how often should we be willing to update the facts we rely on every single day?
It means knowledge isn't a statue. It's a living landscape that you have to keep reevaluating, keep digging, and keep questioning.
That's the deep dive. We'll see you next time.